Hi, this is Greg Hildebrandt. I've been a professional artist for 62 years. I've done a lot of artwork in that time, and I'm still just trying to get it right.
Okay, do it.
Hello.
Greetings.
Hello.
How are we doing today, everyone?
Very good. How you doing, man? Nice to see you again.
I am doing great, and as everyone who is already starting to tune in can see, Greg and I have with us a very special guest,
Aha.
none other than Miss Jean Scrocco.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so we are in for an exciting conversation today to find out about the start of Unicorn Publishing. But first, we got to take care of some business. One, we have the ever-developing house behind you, Mr. Hildebrandt.
It's almost finished. All I have to do is, here's the owners over here. They're going to be sitting on the porch with their dog. So I've got to put them in. That'll be the last of it, hopefully, because they've only seen it via the electric viewer here. So
Right.
once they see it live and hopefully approve it, then that'll be it. And
Yeah, when he thinks it's done, I'm going to roll it up. I'm going to have him come over because they're probably watching this, just so you know. I'm going to roll it up. I'm going to have them drive over. I'm going to hand them the rolled canvas. Then they're going to be able to do something I never, ever do. They're going to be able to take it home and stare at it and make notes. And it's only because we love you.
I hope not too many
Not
notes.
too many notes.
I hope no notes, actually.
And then they get to bring it back, and then we'll send it out to be framed.
Bada boom.
There you go.
Very cool. So we also had some more exciting news. Last week, we got the official release date for the Marvel art of the Brothers Hildebrandt, and boom, you now have your copies in hand.
Aha! It's here.
There it is. It's a hefty, substantial book.
It took 40 years, Keith.
Yeah, long time coming.
The very first time I suggested to Marvel that they should do this book was in 1995. And then they filed for bankruptcy. Oh, well.
So it's been on the shelf and off the shelf and on the shelf and
So
off the shelf.
I've been pushing this and pushing this and pushing this for 40 years.
So there's an interview with me.
Since it got pushed off, though, they got to include some extra work that he's done in the last several years, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All of Greg's stuff, actually. This has all the Marvel art that Greg and Tim did together, for sure. And
all the masterpieces.
All the masterpieces, all the posters.
Plus
X-Men
2099, the entire book.
X-Men 2099 book. And then we have the whole section in the back that starts in 2007. That is after Tim passed away. And there's the 12-foot paintings that Greg did for the Montclair Art Museum show on comic art. And there's trading cards, and there's
book covers.
Cover art that he did. Wait a minute. I don't know if you can see that. For
Treasure Island.
Treasure Island series for Marvel. So we have all of those covers. There's 6 of those. And then he did Star Wars for them. You can see covers, Star Wars covers.
They repackaged their Star Wars comics, the original Star Wars comics, in 3 volumes, and I did painted covers for them. And they're in the book here.
Awesome.
And then all of his covers.
Variants. A lot of variants.
Covers that he's done for Marvel. And
so it's pretty, it's kind of like includes everything up till they went to press, and that was, what, a few months ago.
Well, let's see. What would be the very last thing in here? The very last thing would be 2019, the cover for Malekith. And I'm not going to show it to you. So you get to buy it.
One of Walt Simon's characters.
One of Walter Simon's characters, who we absolutely love, Walter.
So
okay,
there it is. Cool.
So it's there. It's available 2 different ways on the gallery. It's available just signed, or you can get it with a remark if you'd like. Greg's choice. Okay. So, next, go.
When you say remark, Gene, just so for clarity's sake, what are you talking about?
Okay, this particular book. Give me that again. Thank you very much. Okay, this particular book has black end papers, which is the coolest thing, because most of the time they're light colors, and then Greg does a pencil sketch with graphite. But in this book, he'll be using either white pencils or silver Sharpies to do a sketch right on the end paper.
Plus, they've included a little white
who knew?
white
Oh my
space
God.
at the end.
Which
It's
he will sign.
It's a sketch box. Greg
he will sign.
will draw something on this page for fans that we meet at art shows.
I didn't know they were doing that. So don't even think about it. He'll sign it there. Okay, in his little tiny box for a sketch.
Whatever, we'll figure it out.
He's gonna do an end paper sketch like he usually does, which is like a head and shoulder of a character, and it's gonna go top to bottom on that end paper. You get your money's worth.
So anyway, that's that.
So we got several people that are already chiming in and saying hello, and you guys are looking great. We got Cesar Castillo Jr., who was the Jack Sparrow cosplay that bought a copy of your Thor painting from the New York Comic Con. So
I remember Jack Sparrow.
Yeah,
I do.
And so they're also asking, do you know when the next art show that you two will be doing?
Yes, we do. 2022 is the next art show we will be doing, unfortunately. Yeah.
As much as we'd like to get out right away and go do one, but can't take a chance.
It's not going to happen. With the variants, both of us are at high risk, unfortunately. And even though yesterday we did get our first shot, yay!
What a beautiful setup they have.
And
it was so fantastically organized here. It was like with the army was there, the directing, everybody doing a great job, and everybody's beautiful, right?
Yeah, everybody's great.
It was fantastic.
And we'll get our next shot. We'll get our second shot in March, in the beginning of March. But there's just too many variants, and even the big shows, Dragon Con, Baltimore, they don't know. No one knows right now, because if it just keeps getting worse as far as variants in this country, right now we have 7 variants in this country, and if these vaccines don't cover those, then you just can't take the chance if you are us. So
in any event,
understood.
But we do love you, and we would love to hear from you. So if you have a question for Greg, okay, that you're not going to get answered here, you can email me, Jean, Jean, at spiderwebart.com, and he will answer all of your questions, all 2,000 of them. Go ahead, Keith.
All right, so when we left off, I see you're holding the Book of Oz.
Yeah.
We left off last week. We had started talking about you doing your illustrated classics, Greg, and you had gone through A Christmas Carol and Greg Hildebrandt's favorite fairy tales. So we started talking about that, and then you picked up a little bit with Wizard of Oz and the fact that it was no longer being published by Simon and Schuster.
Yep.
And it came out under the new brand of Unicorn Publishing, which, to my knowledge, did not exist before then.
No,
and
right.
That is the reason. That is the reason we have Miss Jean Scrocco with us, and that we have titled this "You Can't Do That." So Jean, before we get into the introduction of Unicorn Publishing, Greg has mentioned to us that the two of you had been working together for a couple of years at this point. So can you give us a little recap from your perspective of meeting Greg Hildebrandt and then making the decision to take him on? Were you working as an art agent or a rep or anything like that with any other artist before Greg, or give us your story?
I'm just going to tell you, since you started it with that, everything you think you wanted to get to today, you're not going to.
Well, we could make this last longer. We could do more than an hour.
I can give you the quick version, but you'll miss the best stories. Okay, so the quick version is art was my major in college, and I love art, I love it. But unfortunately, I knew I was okay. I wasn't a bad artist, but I knew I was never going to be a great artist. And it wasn't that I couldn't train myself to be better. I could. I just didn't have the eye of the tiger, which is what I say any good, really good artist needs. Okay. And so I decided that the second passion in my life was real estate and architecture. And so I really wanted to go into building. That my father was an architect and my grandfather was a builder, and it's in my blood. And so I had this whole plan, this big, huge plan. And I decided that I was going to get my realtor's license, and then I was going to get my broker's license, and I was going to get a builder's license, and I was going to build, and then I was going to renovate Victorian homes. That was the passion. And one day, my brother, who was in neurobiology, came over for a cup of coffee. Very close. I adore my brother. Sat down in my house. I was married at the time, and he said, "Now get this, over a cup of coffee, I'm getting out of medicine."
Married at the time, but not to me.
No, not to you.
Right. Just to
My
make
first
sure that
husband.
that's straight.
I'm sorry. And my heart stopped. Because my brother's a genius, and I adore him. And so, but I didn't say a word. I didn't make him wrong. And so I just said, "So what do you plan on doing now that you're getting out of medicine?" And he said, "I thought I would go into business with you." Which of course made absolutely no sense to me at all whatsoever, because he's a genius and I am not, and he's science and
Yes,
I'm
you are.
art. And
He's a genius, you're a genius in your own respective ways.
Okay. And so I said, "What are we doing?" And he said, "Well, I really enjoy business, so I'm going to take care of the business end, and you take care of the art end, and we're going to represent artists and photographers and writers." I said, "You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind." But since I adore him, the next day we incorporated the business. We went into partnership together. And I said, "Now where do we start?" Something I had no background in at all. None. Okay. And he said, "Well, I want you to meet the Hildebrandts. They're friends of mine. They're fantasy artists. They're fabulous. They're incredible, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Wait, Joe, please stop. Don't tell me. This is the two guys that did that book, Ursharak. I went to a big opening in New York at a church.
Unitarian church down near the
said,
park.
Where they had witches and wizards and people
They had it all set up.
stirring pots." Okay.
The announcement of the book, they all had it all set up.
And I said, and they were both drunk,
They
those
were
two guys. And,
back in the
and
day,
he said, "Yeah, those two guys." And I said, "You're out of your mind. You're nuts. There is no way."
I was only drunk because I was so nervous.
Yeah, sure.
So I had to,
So he said, "Well, just do me a favor." He said, "You know the Lord of the Rings." And I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." He said, "Gene, the whole world knows the Lord of the Rings." I said, "Well, I have no idea what you're talking about." He said, "Okay." He said, "Well, I'm going to take you over to Greg's studio and just talk to him." I said, "All right, fine, I will." And so we went over, and he had all these Lord of the Rings paintings all around this giant carriage house that was his studio. And I'm telling you, Keith, my heart just melted right there. And I just could not imagine that someone could paint that way. I could walk into the paintings. I could walk into them. The Unexpected Party was sitting there. It was just amazing to me. And the Healing of Eowyn, and it blew me away. And I looked at my brother and I looked at Greg, because he had this long ponytail and this crazy beard. And I said, "Joe, are you telling me that art came out of that?" "Really? That?" He said, "Yeah."
Those are my Ben Gunn years.
I said,
I look
"Okay."
like,
So I said, "Okay." And the next night we met at Ann's Clam Bar in West Orange, New Jersey, the bottom of the hill in West Orange, New Jersey.
Italian restaurant.
And Italian restaurant, which is not there anymore. And we outlined what the contract was going to be. Everything that was going to be in it, what I was going to do, what he was going to do, blah, blah, blah. And we signed the outline, all three of us. And then the next morning, I drove over to his studio, because it was only 6 minutes from my house. And I walked in. He was sitting at this big 12-foot easel. It was an enormous 12-foot easel. And I don't know what he's painting. I have no idea what he's painting.
I don't remember.
And he was sitting right in the middle of it, and he had his paint table with his palette of paint to the right of him. and he was going like this and dipping his paint and going like this and dipping his paint. And I walked over to his left behind him, and I just kind of looked at what he was painting, and then I stepped behind him, and I grabbed his ponytail and I cut it off.
Sort of like Samson and
A little
Delilah.
like Samson and Delilah, but not quite. And he jumped up and he went
I went nuts.
bonkers.
What the hell are you doing? God damn it,
Screaming,
son of
and
a
he's
bitch.
throwing shit all over
He
his
was
studio.
swearing like crazy, you know.
And I just stood there, and he said, finally he calmed down.
No, I called my, wait a minute.
10 minutes.
I said, it kind of goes like, oh, it's time for a change. What the hell? You know, it's
That-
like that was pretty much like that because
Not quite.
it's like, who cares? I mean,
close.
really. Well, yeah.
So he said, finally he calmed down, he stopped yelling, and he said, why did you do that? And I just looked at him because people either love me or they hate me because I'm just me. And I said, have you looked in a mirror? Do you know what you look like? And he was like, what do you mean? I look like me. I said, no, you look like a wild bagman from New York City who's spewing religious crap. And he was like, oh. So I said, sit down, I'm giving you a haircut. And I took out my cape and my barber shears.
She brought the damn scissors with her
I did.
with the objective of doing that, you know?
That was the intention. Trimmed his beard so that he didn't look like this huge thing. And gave him a really nice haircut, which he still wears today because he hasn't gone to a barber since.
The last time I was to a barber, the haircut cost 75 cents.
There you go. See that? It's a long time ago.
Look at
And
that. So you get an agent and a barber all in one shot.
there you go.
Absolutely. Plus
the
a closer.
next
Plus,
thing I did was
She then takes me out to a mall to buy me clothes. Because all I had was, ragged, T-shirts and blue
and
jeans.
his
and
army
paint.
boots.
And
His
my army boots, though, damn it. These aren't, I didn't buy these
Covered
at
in paint.
you know what I mean? They're mine. The real, I wish I still had them. Those things were built like
I'm
freaking.
actually trying to make this short. Let's not go off on tangents. It would be
Well,
helpful.
army boots are.
Anyhow, so I said, okay, get in the car. I got in the car. And he said, where are we going? I said, the Short Hills Mall. And we spent the entire day at the Short Hills Mall.
Big,
and
big
as I
fancy
said,
mall here,
my grandfather was a builder. He, by profession, was a tailor, an Italian tailor. Okay. And so clothes, very important to me, not important to him at all. And when we left the mall,
Costumes are important, not clothes.
when we left the mall, he had 6 magnificent outfits. Each outfit was in, its own garment bag. Silk jackets and silk ties, gorgeous silk shirts and ballet shoes, beautiful leather belts. And each one was a completely different style, and each bag was numbered. And I took him back to his house and rang the front doorbell, and his wife answered the door, and I handed her these 6 garment bags. She said, what is that for? And I said, well, depending on the meeting I'm going to take him to, I'm going to call you the day before and tell you which bag to dress him in.
Bag number 2.
I said, and put him in it, and
She
I'll
doesn't have
pick
to.
him up.
I can put
You can put your
my
own
own
pants
clothes
on.
on,
I
yeah.
know. And I said, but pull it out so that this is what he's wearing. And then when he gets home, if it's dirty, take it to a cleaner. If it's not, put it back in the bag so it's ready for the next
So it was
meeting.
really cool because I didn't have to think about anything except doing the artwork. You know what I'm saying? It's like fantastic. All this stuff's taken care of, and I just could just sit there and draw and paint pictures.
Because I told him it was not possible, Keith, to take him to any business meeting looking like Ben Gunn. I couldn't do it.
Anyway, I mean, well, this is supposed to be talking about the establishment of Unicorn, and you started Unicorn.
But he asked me how I started
Hang on,
working with you.
Everybody needs to know the
details.
backstory, 'cause
Okay, so we started working.
But you started. We didn't start. You didn't start with Unicorn yet.
No. He asked me how we started
Yeah,
working
yeah.
again. Okay, so we started working the very next day after, the terror of getting new clothes and a haircut. He got over that. And we sat down and we actually started to brainstorm together because I didn't know very much about his career. I just had seen his art like literally one day. And I said to him, well, I'm not so sure that the sword and sorcery calendar market is where you want to stay. And he said, well, why not? And I said, well, how many times can you paint a dragon? How many times can you paint a guy in, chainmail with, with a sword in his hand? And so we started looking at all different options, which directions to go together. And I love the classics.
Yeah, but Gene, bro, you're jumping ahead. The first things that we started working on were Krull, and you repped that. You spent 6 months getting the Dragons of Krull, it was originally called the script, for Tim and me to do the production design, and
That's
then
true.
Tim dropped
we
out,
did do Krull
and we
first, yeah.
split, and
Yeah,
then
you split. Right.
Gene was repping me now
Yeah, I forgot that.
on the
Yeah.
production design for the Dragons of Krull, which eventually became Krull, with Ted Mann Productions.
Well, we did a couple of things together before
and then
that.
Perkirka Publishing.
We did the Trust the Night Before Christmas book with Golden Books. We did the Clash of the Titans.
Right.
Yeah, we did a bunch of things.
Before
that first
Unicorn.
year before Unicorn.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then the first year, when you started Unicorn, the very first thing we talked about, I mentioned this I think last week, the very first publishing project you did was a soccer training book with Pele.
Yes, it was.
And then you did Women of
Which
Vision.
I loved, and I love Pele.
Then Gene did a book with Arlene Alda, Alan Alda's
And
wife, who was a photographer who photographed the last days of MASH, the very first, and Gene got to publish that book.
Yes, I did.
Arlene chose Gene to publish that book for her, and then Gene published then Women of Vision. It was a book of female photographers with Arlene in the book, and a whole bunch of all the other major female photographers. So you did these several books, and plus the book we talked about, I think
Yes, but Greg, you lost track of something. I started the company because of you.
Yeah. Okay.
Because of the Wizard of Oz.
Right.
I was trying all those different things. I was trying to decide, Keith, did I want to do multiples in publishing, multiple areas, genres, and areas. I even tried a book on, I don't even know what you call it, called The Question of Innocence, about child abuse. So I was trying all different things, but it really actually didn't start that way. It started because after the two books that you talked about last week, the Dickens Christmas Carol book and the fairy tale book, the third book was The Wizard of Oz. And I think you touched on this last week, where I was negotiating the contract because Kate Klimo, the editor at Simon & Schuster, had moved over to Knopf. And I was negotiating it with Knopf, and it was taking forever.
So hang on 1 second there, Gene. So at Simon & Schuster, you worked with one agent. Her name's Kate.
No,
she wasn't an agent. She was the publisher for the children's division of Simon & Schuster. She was one of the most powerful people in the industry, Kate. Yeah. So we worked directly with her.
And I knew Kate from way before. I think I told us last week,
60s.
maybe, from at Platt and Monk, the juvenile publisher. Kate just got out of college, and she was there, and that's how I met her years before, back in, when the hell was that, in the 60s. And she was fantastic. And anyway, she was a genius.
Yeah.
She still is.
So she moved over as publisher for Random House, for the Knopf division of Random House. And so because we loved Kate, we went with Kate.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other question in that before I continue?
Okay. Yeah. No. That I just wanted to get how that.
Okay. Fine.
That transition occurred.
Okay.
So
I
also to hang on for establishment. How old were you at this time? Like, what age range were you in?
Well, that's a very good question. Let's see. I started the business. I was 27, so at that point, was 29.
29. Okay. So you were young, very young.
Well, but
the thing is, too,
use is an amazing thing, because, and I think that's the whole point of this show. When you're young and people tell you can't, you do. Especially if you're arrogant. And I'm a control freak, and I've always been. This is the day I was born, I'm sure. I kicked my way out of my mother. I'll bet that, my last dollar on that one. And so, no one ever told me I couldn't do anything when I was growing up. I mean, it was always the opposite. And my grandparents, my parents, you could do anything you want. You can be anything you want. You're never going to need a husband. You're never going to need a man. If you happen to want one, that's your choice. But as long as you go for what you want and you keep at it and put the work in, the time, the work, the energy, effort, you can do whatever you want. And so,
Can I just interject? I mean, I knew Joe, Jean's brother, but I mean, he was a genius.
he is a genius.
Wait a minute. I met Joe. He was still in college, and I met him while he was in college, and we became good friends. And then he got involved with me. We're working on Ursulac, basically handling the whole deal through the William Morris Agency. And people were telling me, what are you working with? He doesn't know anything about film, and what the hell has he got to do? I said, I instantly had that sense of the genius of Joe, that he could take on almost anything and deal with it. Because he had been, took my carriage house, and I bought this house, and he transformed it into this studio. And in any event, so then I met Jean, and I got that same sense about her, of being this person who was very super intelligent and bright and very fast to grab things and see and understand. So that was all there for me.
So in spite of relative youth, and you could see that it would work, so you put your trust
Totally.
into their hands.
1,000%.
You know, there was a very interesting thing. I guess. I mean, I joked that I was an arrogant kid. I wasn't really arrogant. I wasn't. But I mean, not in the true sense of the word. I was a very pushy kid. I had a million questions. For everybody I met, I had a million questions. And I would push till I got an answer. Okay? And what that taught me was that how you approach something with a person, how you speak, if you're courteous, if you listen to what they have to say and don't interrupt them, you will learn a lot. And so, because like I said, you know, I was raised that I could do anything. I never really had a sense that I couldn't. I know I could fail. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm great. I was scared to death half the time, as far as, you know, taking a chance. But I love to take a chance. That's, you know, to me, throw a carrot in front of me and let me chase it. And that's the best thing in the world. And that's what I do with the artists. So, you know, but it was very interesting because my grandfather, who was one of the great mentors of my life, told me from the time I was a child, a little kid, no one is better than someone else, and no one is lesser than someone else. Okay. And we're all the same. And he used to say, Jean, people achieve differently in their lifetime, but that's the only difference. And you treat everyone exactly the same. Okay. So, I mean, just like really quick, what that means for me and what it has all my life was, you know, we were at a funeral for Walter Cronkite, and President Obama and President Clinton were there. And at the end of the funeral, I walked up to Clinton and started talking. And the people that I was with were like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I want to talk to him." And they were like, "But it's the president." I said, "It's a guy. He puts his pants on the same way every morning. Okay, he has a cup of coffee, takes a shower, goes to, yeah, that's it. That's how people are for me." So in business, starting my own business, I treated everybody that same way.
No, and that's a fact. I mean,
yeah, calling the president of Marvel or the owner of Marvel or the CEO or, you know, Paul Levitz or, you know, at that time, Joe Calamari, Stan Lee. I mean, I woke up Jack Kirby. They're all the same to me. And I've never.
Well, She was working on a project
Don't do that.
called West Coast. Well, don't do what?
Don't get into that project.
Well,
You
I'm
get off-
not
you
going
get
to talk
off
about
track.
I'm not talking about the project. I'm talking about she called early, and it was like really California time, and
Right.
you know, and Roz answered the phone, his wife,
So,
and so he was still
sweet. So sweet. They didn't even know me. They had no idea who I was. And she said, Jean, could you call back after 9? I said, ooh, sorry. Yeah, sure. But, you know, so starting the business to me was logical. Everything was, you know, there was a progression that you needed to do this, then you needed to do this, and if you failed here, then you need to go over here and do this. And that's how I basically look at everything in life, you know. And so when Kate went over, to get back to the Wizard of Oz book, when Kate went over, I had no reason to believe, and this is part of the arrogance of youth, I had no reason to believe that I wasn't going to be able to negotiate the agreement that I wanted with Knopf. None. I had no trouble up until that point, even negotiating with Columbia Pictures on the Dragons of Kroll movie, and I was only 28 when I did that. So I figured, well, what the hell? But the legal department in Knopf was different than Simon & Schuster. They didn't like a lot of the things I put in the contract, and they kept sending it back. So, because I write my own agreements. And so we were in this huge conference room. Greg at this point had painted all the art for the book.
I wasn't there. I didn't go to
Okay.
those meetings.
Now, he wasn't at the meeting. And there was no contract. And I was furious. I was really furious. And so we get into this conference room, and that side of the table is all lawyers level. Okay. Nothing like a little intimidation, if you know. Yeah. And this side of the table was me, and my brother here on my right, and Kate Klimo, the publisher, on my left. Okay. And so this little tiny lawyer, and stature isn't an issue, but I always did get a kick out of it because she came up to about my nose and had enough arrogance to fill the state of California, if I do say so myself. And she pushed my contract across the table at me, and it was all red ink. And this was like the 12th version of this contract. So I calmly pushed it back across the table, and I looked at all these attorneys and I said, sign it this way, or there is no deal. I'm done. And she pushed it back across the table at me, and she stood up and said, you haven't been published until you're published by Knopf. Whoa! Okay, at which point I stood up, slammed both hands down on the conference table as loud as I could, and started screaming, which, as anybody would know, Italians can scream very loud. And I said, listen, bitch, what you don't understand is I don't need you.
It was probably you, something or other, bitch. Probably more.
Probably more,
Probably.
right. But
Something that begins with an F, I think.
could be, could be. And I said, I'm done. I've had enough. Greg's book is ready. I said, I don't need Knopf. I don't need Random House. I don't need Simon & Schuster or William Morrow or any of you. I will just publish the fucking book myself. And the lawyer looked at me horrified, and she said, you'll never be able to do that. I said, you know what, honey? It takes you 2 years to get a book on the shelves. It's going to take me 3 months. I said, I guarantee you in 3 months, I will be in every bookstore in this country and in every warehouse club in this country. And I stood up and I said to my brother, let's go. We're in publishing. And Kate, I heard her as we walked out the door, she looked at these people and she said, you have no idea what you just did. You have no idea. And the next day, Joe and I started publishing books. Literally. I mean, we had McEnroe, we had Pele, we had, what's his name, the guy? The golf guy. What the hell was his name?
Big golfer.
Give me some golf names.
I don't
Not a
remember.
golf.
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, right. We did a calendar with Jack on his golf courses. And McEnroe I walked out on. I had a meeting with him and his father to do a tennis book, and he was so obnoxious. so fucking arrogant that I stood up and I said,
Did you
you
do
know,
a calendar
you are a child and I will not deal with children. And I walked out the door and he was older than me, but you know, whatever. Did I what?
Winter Tour Museum?
Oh, the Winter Tour Museum down in, where is that? Is it Delaware or Pennsylvania?
I don't know.
Winter Tour Museum and Gardens. It's a magnificent place. They called me. It was very funny. They called me. They wanted me to design their annual calendar. And so I went down there, you know, I photographed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things in the museum. It was magnificent. And then I designed it and I sent it to them. And I did the front cover, black background, with a top hat and white gloves and a cane and playing cards from, you know, like the 30s. It was beautiful. And they called me up and they said, you put a black cover on the calendar. I said, striking. It's gorgeous. And they said, you can't put a black cover on the calendar. I said, okay, I'll change it. And so then one of them called me up and said, no, we don't have any time. And I think for about 15 years after that, Winter Tour had black covers on their calendars. It was so successful.
But aside from the fact that we did The Wizard of Oz, here's Jean posing for Oz as a woman, because she, in the book, man, I can never get this straight.
Yeah, I'll hold it.
Oz, in the original book, Oz appears to the Scarecrow as a woman. She appears to the Tin Man in another form. And, you know, he appears in different ways to the principal characters. I forgot exactly all. But in any event.
But
So not only the art was all done, so Jean then decides, well, you talk at the Kate. We said we needed a Christmas book, right?
Wait. Here was the fun part. We were not set up for graphics of any kind.
Okay.
Oh,
And
this
so,
was-
my brother said to me, "Well, okay, genius, you just put us in the publishing business. Now what are we doing as
Yeah,
far
that was-
as this goes? Because we're not set up for this." And you know, I opened up my drawing board that I hadn't had open in a long time, and I taught myself key line and paste up, and I did all the boards for the whole book. And
Yeah, in the basement of your house.
yeah, in the basement of my house. And it was, I mean, it was like 2 hours a night I would sleep, and I'd be down there with overlays, you know, because in those days there were no computers. So,
Yeah.
you know, you literally did everything with acetate overlays, and, you know, your crop marks and everything.
Rubber cement.
Rubber cement had, you know, I still have all my tools. I'll never let them go. I'll bury myself.
But then once you got into it further, right, you had to get warehousing.
Oh, yeah.
Unicorn needed a warehouse, get a warehouse manager.
I mean,
the whole product, you know, it's
in
like
5
this
years,
thing kept
I had 38 employees.
figuring out as you
And-
go how to do it, because you never did it before, you know,
Right.
just step by step, you move into it. Because years later, people would ask Jean, where did you go to school to learn how to do that stuff? Well, yeah, right then and there, I went to school by doing
That was
it.
the school.
You know, and that's the way it happened. It was
But
amazing.
It was interesting because Greg's right. It kept growing because we kept pushing to do what the industry was not doing. And so, for example, you know, I remember we had, I guess, about 24 employees at that point. We had moved into beautiful office spaces in Morris Plains, 5,000 square feet of office space. And I had a 5,000 square foot warehouse that we rented in Whippany. And I will never forget when, you know, my brother came in my office one day and said, "We have to go to computers." And I was like, "I like my Selectric typewriter." What? What are you talking about? You know, and the next thing I knew, we had a $50,000 investment, and I was staring at this thing, and I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified
But
of it.
Joe
you
was
know.
the genius in terms of the
He still is the
technology.
genius in technology.
And he's the one that made that decision, and
Yeah.
you reacted like, my God, I
Like,
don't really.
my God, yeah,
And you
shoot
hit.
me.
You finally you're with the
I-
office. You locked the door in your office that day.
I locked the door in my office for 3 days in a row and just read the whole goddamn book on how to use it and taught myself how to use it, and that was fine. But you know, Joe would always push me, and I would push him. You know, I would make him crazy from a standpoint that, you know, I wanted our books to be gorgeous. I wanted them to mimic, in a way, the old Scribner books. So, you know, linen covers with foil stamping on the front, on the spine, on the back of the books, beautiful
Yeah,
end papers,
kind of thing.
and
The,
and all of this is done by hand. And this, you see this? Wait, give me this. This is called an onlay. Okay, every one of these is printed and then pasted on the book. Every one of them. Okay, and all the linen colors were done to my specifications, and the printers we were using would sign an agreement with me that they would never make that color in linen for another customer of theirs. That was my color once I created that color. So I really got a little bit nuts. And then
what about the
things
introduction?
like this. So every one of the books that I did had an introduction from a famous person. So this is Margaret Hamilton, did the introduction for this.
Played the witch in the film.
My criteria was if they were someone that I really loved that had acted either stage or film as a character in the classic, that I tried to get them to do the introduction. And I was really blessed. I mean, we had Margaret Hamilton. We had
Frank Langella did the introduction
Langella.
for the Dracula book.
Yeah.
And
So
that was a great experience with him too, wasn't it?
oh,
The way he wrote the introduction, Gene called him to do the introduction because he had done I saw the Broadway play when he appeared, Gene and C, when he was on Broadway when he did Dracula. It was fantastic. It was incredible, and totally different from the movie that he did. Completely different. In any event, but she called him and he said he would do it, but then he just couldn't get it. And
no, he didn't say we'd do it.
Okay, go on.
No. I called him like 9 times. I called his agent, and see, this is where you never give up. And they kept saying no, and I was too determined. And so, because I had a lot of friends in California, and I knew he was filming a movie in California, and everybody in California stayed at the Sunset Marquis Hotel in California.
Well, that was
in
one
LA.
of the hotels.
I know, but it was one of the big hotels that the movie stars loved to be.
Yeah, that was it.
So I had a friend of mine scope it out, figure it out. She called me up and she said, "Okay, Jean, he's at the Sunset." I said, "Okay." So I called and I asked for Frank Langella, and they said he's not there. And I said, "Oh crap, sure he is. I don't know what name he's under. Just put me through to his room." And so they did. And it was so funny because Frank answered the phone. And I said, "Hi, this is who I am," and blah, blah, blah. And he said, "Haven't I turned you down 9 times?" And I said, "You have." I said, "But you don't know what I do." And he said, "Well, I don't know what that means." And I said, "I tell you what, Frank, I'm going to overnight you a couple of the books I've done. And if you like what you see, you call me back. If you don't, and I don't hear from you, I will never bother you again." And so I overnighted a couple of the books we had done in linen, and he called me up the next day when he got them, and he said, "Jean, these are gorgeous." I said, "Thank you. Now will you do an introduction?" And he said, "Well, I have been asked so many times in my career to do something relating to Dracula, and I've always turned it down because it was one of my favorite things I've ever done, and it's very important to me, but I love the quality of your books, so the answer is yes." I said, "Fine." And so I'm waiting. The book is plated in Asia. They're ready to go to press, and I have this blank page and no introduction. And I'm calling him like, "Frank," and he said, finally, "Jean, I can't do it. I'm too close to it. I can't do it." He said, "You write it. If I like it, I'll sign it." I said, "I can't do that." So I went home and I thought, all right, I'll try and write something and see if he can edit what I write. And I get into work the next morning, and the introduction is in my fax machine. We had fax machines in those days. And I called him up. I woke him up, and I said, "I don't understand." He said, "We were on the set last night, and we had a power failure." He said, "And it was 10 o'clock at night, and the entire place went black. And everybody left, and I sat there at a table in the dark, lit a candle, and wrote the introduction, and it came to me, and it was perfect." And I was like, "Oh, my heart!" So, and I want you to know that when you talk about being arrogant when you're young, when he said yes, he said, "Well, what are you going to pay me?" And I said, "Pay you? I can't afford you. Are you kidding?" And he said, "You want me to do an introduction for free?" I said, "No, I don't." I said, all I can offer you is what I can afford. And what that is I will send you a case of every book I publish for the rest of my life that I publish. He said, fine. And I did, right up until the day that I closed the company. And he got a case of every book. I don't know what he did with them. I mean, I could have used them as insulation for all I know.
But Jean's done a lot. I mean, there's so much that other than the books that I've done. Like G and Joe did the Live Aid book, the Live Aid concert that Geldof started, and all these people did in England and here. And they got the publishing in America to do the book. And so they did that book, which was phenomenal.
It was phenomenal.
You know,
that has nothing to do with this.
Well, I'm saying you've done a lot of stuff all over the place, not just.
Let Keith talk. Go ahead.
I want to pause there for just a second and go back because I want to hear your thoughts on this, Greg. So you've done all these illustrations for The Wizard of Oz, fully expecting them to now be published by Knopf. And you either get a phone call or a visit in which you are now informed, hey, guess what? We started a publishing company. So,
fantastic.
What was your thought process when you heard that? Like,
I was completely 1,000% for it. Again, like I say, I know Joe, and I told you this and Jean already, and got the sense, and I had that third eye that I could see who the hell they were, and I knew damn well they'd pull it off extremely well, and do it, and I complete 1,000% trust in it. So
Keith,
it was fantastic for me.
One of the things I think that probably was appealing to Greg from that standpoint was the fact that he knew I would ask his opinion, not only on the design of the books, but on the color separation of his art. And that would be the first time in his career anyone would ask his opinion on color separation. And it's vitally important to me that every artist that we worked with was happy with the color separation. And a lot of times you're not going to get that. You do a job for someone and you send them the scan today, and what you get back is what you get back.
Well, the thing was then too about this, Jean and I mean, we had started right off the bat with making the decision to do the Christmas Carol and then the Favorite Fairy Tales book. Like, these are all public domain books. Like, anybody could publish. Whoops! Turn off the phone. Wait a minute, Jean's doctor. She's calling.
Important phone call.
Important phone call. In any event, we were just able to, on our own, the two of us, sit there and pick out all these great stories that we loved, either in book form or film form, and and just say, oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that, and it was like that was incredible. And then, of course, I think I talked about this before. The challenge for me of facing these incredible classics that have been done so many times by other people, to be able now to do it on my own was like terrifying and thrilling at the same time, Yeah.
So we got a question coming in that could lead to an interesting story from you, and maybe even a whole show on it. But John Nelligan is asking. Oh, you're back. I thought you were going to take a little bit longer. Someone asked about if we're ever going to see an Ursharak movie.
No, we are not.
Probably not.
No, we're not. Okay, answer that question. I'm sorry, but we're not.
So we also had another question. You talked about the color separation. What is that?
Oh, okay. So, okay, this is going to be very interesting. So, in the good old days, in the original days of publishing, I would take the art that an artist would give me, and I would send it out to a photographer, professional photographer, and they would take 8x10 transparencies, okay, which is some people call them chromes, some people call them transparencies, some people call them slides, okay. And then I would send that transparency to Dugal Color Labs in New York, okay, which they would wrap on this gigantic machine called a Hell scanner, okay, and with light on the inside of this big tube, it would scan this way and scan the entire piece of art. And then they would send it back to me on digital media. And in those days, they were called SyQuest discs. And if anyone is not my age, you have no idea what I'm talking about, so it doesn't matter. And then that is what you would send to the printer. The printer would take that digital media and they would make a printer's plate from that in 4 color, usually. If you were printing a color image, it's usually done in 4 color. So the scan, the transparency, all of this is vitally important. But what most publishers don't do is they don't take that digital media, print it, test print it, color correct it, make sure that it actually looks like the art. Is it too dark? Is it too red? Is it too blue? Is it too warm? Is it too cool? Okay, we do. As you know, Keith, because you have done it 100,000 times for me in all the years we have known each other. And if you don't color correct something before it's printed, it's never going to look good. And if you don't understand printing itself, whether it's a sheet-fed press or a web press, which is a giant press, okay, if you don't understand how the printing process is going to be done, you still won't get a good reproduction. And a real easy example of that is trading cards. Trading cards are printed in a way that they have very high saturation, ink saturation. And so, give me that book, 1 second.
Here's, we want to talk about this picture.
Okay, wait a minute. So if I put that on a trading card, all right, I don't know if you can see this, okay? The blue,
Vaguely.
the
Yep,
blue
very blue.
would, okay, the blue in this, if I took that scan and put it on a trading card, the blue would be a really deep royal blue, even though it has nothing to do with the painting, because the ink saturates into that paper. It's just thick, okay? But you have to know that, and you have to know not just the actual physical object that it's being printed on. You have to know the press, the kind of press it's being printed with. And you also have to know how the artist paints. Now, this is a real interesting thing because I have been blessed in that I've got both ends of the spectrum because I chose to. So I've published, I paint, okay, and I represent. And because of that, I understand the printer, I understand the publisher, I understand the process, and I have sat on press. 1 year I sat on press for 6 weeks. And when I say sit on press, I don't mean in the green room, I mean sit on a pallet while the press is doing this and changing the ink with the pressman, and they're telling me I'm wrong and I know I'm right. And they're looking at me like, shit, how did you know that? And I'm saying, because I know how the artist paints. And they're like, oh God. Because if you know that an artist is doing an underpaint in a certain thing, the scanner sees a very, very specific color that the naked eye does not. And so what you really got to know what you're doing to get good reproduction.
I'm going to go back. Here,
Go
back to the favorite fairy tale book. We talked about this a little bit, This when Jean and I first started working together, and she posed for the Little Mermaid in the book. Well, can you hold this damn thing up there? I can't ever get the eye right.
Great.
So there's the book, and then here's the actual original
all right,
painting.
that's what he wants to show you.
I'll link to it when this all uploads to YouTube. I'll also provide a link.
Okay,
but you know what he's trying to show you, Keith, is you see how dark the blue is in the coral?
Yes, I can. I'm not sure that everybody can, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
Now, there is no dark blue in this reproduction. Okay,
Right,
and the reason is that these scans were done in Spain. So Simon & Schuster sent those transparencies to Spain. they had absolutely nothing to compare them to because the originals were in the United States.
But no, just okay. That's technical. Now, Jean had posed for this, and I talked about this a little bit last week, I think. When we read the text, Hans Christian Andersen's text, he does not describe the mermaid at all or her hair color. And so in the conversation we're having, I'm saying to Jean, well, it should be blonde. Nah, it's too blonde. Green, that's too weird. And then Jean said, make it red, make it bright cadmium red. And so I did that. And then, segue into the future, about 1990. I go to Disney to give a talk. They invited me to come to Disney to give a talk to the animation department, which blew my mind. Even though none of the old people that I grew up with, and you being a Disney freak of the original animators, were there anymore. But nonetheless, when I got there, I was totally amazed that the whole theater was jammed with all these younger people who had grown up on the Lord of the Rings art that Tim and I did.
Okay.
70s. So I was there about 1990, I think.
Something
like that.
90, 91. Yeah.
And so I gave a whole talk. And Jean, when I left, she said, don't give away your color theory, which of course...
My final last words.
I bring a bunch of paintings with me, and I line them all up, and they have a big green board or black board up there, and they chalk, and I'm giving my whole breakdown.
Warm light, color theory.
Warm light, cool shadow, mid-range, blah, 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 blah. I give the whole technique, and they're filming the whole thing. They shoot the whole thing. So it got applied to the next film, my color theory, according to people that I knew inside the operation. You know what I'm saying? In any event, I met Glenn Keane.
We won't list their names, but we're going to say that these are people that are not low on the ladder run.
I won't list names. Then okay, they took me out to dinner. Principal people involved with the Little Mermaid movie.
Major animators.
And other people, major people, and they took me out to dinner that night and said, they asked me, do you know how the Little Mermaid film got started? I said, I have no idea. They kind of looked at each other, and then they decided to tell me the facts that their boss, without mentioning names, had gone to a bookstore, found Favorite Fairy Tales book, took it off the rack, opened it up, read it, looked at it, saw the picture of the Little Mermaid, brought it back to the studio and said, we're going to animate this. Let's make her look like this. So they told me that they had the picture up around the studio, and they were basically patterning the Little Mermaid in the movie after my character. And they said at the end of it, okay, you can tell your agent to sue Disney. And they weren't being facetious, or they weren't trying to be funny. I mean, they weren't telling me this to kind of like, ha, ha, ha. They were like, really, we're giving you the facts, man.
They were actually telling
just like one artist to another artist.
Sue Disney.
And I went back and told Jean.
We came back from California, walked in my office, and said, so this is what happened. And they said, now you should sue Disney. And I looked up from my desk and I said, and you should go paint.
No, I mean, I had no intention.
I have no way to sue Disney. I would like to sue Disney.
It's like, that's this kind of stuff happens all the time to artists, right? We all know that. And mine was minor. I mean, there have been people who have had much more important and bigger things that they personally did that was their own creation taken from them. It's been happened from the beginning of time, I'm sure. Certainly in Hollywood, it's kind of like, big time there, knowing other people who had stuff taken from them.
The thing about this, Keith, is the copyright infringement issue of this is that the Little Mermaid had never been depicted in that way with red hair. Hans Christian Andersen does not tell you what color her hair is. And it was many years later, after this book was published, that they decided to use that painting, okay, give her red hair, make her look like this, okay, in an animated style, and to a point where one of the big animators who actually did animate Ariel for the movie literally took a piece of animation paper and drew Ariel in that exact pose, which I will not, we have it framed here, signed it and gave it to Greg and said, see what I mean?
Well, he said thank
So,
me for my interest in animation.
you know, I mean,
And they're great.
it's
They're
upsetting. It's very upsetting.
you know, it's like
You know,
it's,
they never credited Greg. They never thanked Greg. They never gave him, you know, a credit on the screen. Nothing.
A line in the credits would be.
Yeah, but I mean, his work has been infringed so many times. It's not even funny.
people call it paying homage. I'm paying homage to.
Tell them
Polite
what
way
you
of-
call it.
Well, I call it. You know, it's like when the people tell me that time and time again with Shrek and everything. Oh, I hope you can see the influence of your art on the film. And what are you supposed to say to that? You know, it's like it's a compliment. You're being flattered, but I call it the double F. It's like you're flattered and fucked in the same breath.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
It's like
Yeah.
we're patting you, we're thanking you, but we're taking it from you, and somebody else is making millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, because The Little Mermaid, they were going to close down animation, you know,
Yeah.
before that film. They were going to close it down over there at Disney. It was being pushed onto the back, you know, burner of like, we're going to eliminate animation until they made that movie that totally resurrected the animation industry. That one movie.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like, you know, you had a little bit to play in that, you know, told by the main people. I mean, I'm not inventing the story, you know. And, you know, you feel, well, what the hell, you know? It's like, come on. Come on.
Anyhow.
Where's your integrity, for Christ's sake?
Oh God! Don't start me. Don't start me.
So,
It's like, it's like, it's one thing, you know, I mean, we're all influenced by other people's work. I have been since I was a kid, influenced by zillions of artists' work. I purposefully have stayed away from copying it. You know what I mean? You don't take it and copy it. You don't take it and take that and try to make it your own.
No, you learn from it.
You learn from it. You're influenced by
Yeah.
the quality, the craftsmanship, the workmanship, what the hell ever. You know
The
what I'm saying?
understanding of light, color, perspective,
Yeah, all that stuff.
composition.
And I guess in a way, everybody influences everybody. But that's more than influencing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but in a case
Yes.
like the Little Mermaid is completely different because Anderson doesn't describe this at all,
Well, yeah,
Doesn't
that's
describe
it.
her. and that was Greg's interpretation of Anderson's words.
To say nothing
You
of,
know, it's like saying, you know, Greg's design for Gandalf, for Frodo, that's Greg's interpretation of the words, the text of J.R.R. Tolkien. So when somebody rips that off, it pisses you off. Okay, and it happens. It happens a lot. You know, I mean, and I'm just going to say this one because I know we're probably at the end here, but. Do we have enough time, Keith, for me to just tell them what just happened with eBay?
yes, please do.
Okay. So for anybody who's listening to this or whatever, if you're an artist, a week ago, a customer of mine sent me a link to 2 different eBay auctions. And it was a guy who he actually had what he said were oil paintings that were 60-inch tall oil paintings that were almost exact reproductions of two of Greg's pinups, the Yellow Rose of Texas and the was it Saturday Night Special. And he sent me these links. He said, "Gene, what the hell is this?" And I said, "I don't know." And so I looked up the guy, and the first thing that was interesting was he actually came up online as a forger. That was the first thing. Son of a bitch. Okay. So I studied them, and he had it listed that he had painted these after Greg Hildebrandt. Okay, which is a crock of shit. Okay. So there is, in my opinion, you don't copy somebody's art and say it's just after them. You don't get to do that. Okay. So I put in Vero forms, which is the copyright infringement, into eBay immediately on both of them. And for a couple of days, they didn't get back to me, which was really annoying me. So these things were up there because not only did I know that they weren't originals, I took his images from eBay and I overlaid them in Photoshop of Greg's paintings. So all he did actually was he bought calendars with Greg's pinups. He scanned them at a very high resolution. He had them printed on 60-inch canvas, okay, one of these, cheap canvas making places. And then he took his oil paint and he tried to make some changes so that it looked like he painted them himself. Okay. I explained that to eBay because now what you have is you have fraud. A, it's a copyright infringement. B, he's telling people they're buying an oil painting. They're not. They're buying a print with some oil paint stuck on it, and it's a copyright infringement. So yesterday, late last night, eBay took down both of the auctions. This man this morning sent me an email through eBay cursing at me, calling me a son of a bitch and a hypocrite and this and that and da 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 da. And he said, the Hildebrandts, they painted this Kirby, painting blah blah blah, and so why is it any different for they did that and I did this and and you're a hypocrite and you're a son of a bitch. And so I very calmly sent him back an email and I said the Kirby painting was a job. It was a job for a book that was in honor of Kirby's life that was authorized by his wife. I said, there is no copyright infringement. I said, not one artist that I represent now or in the past has ever infringed a copyright of someone else. I said, if you have the ability to paint, why don't you try painting your own shit? So it's constant, it's never ending copyright infringement. I spend 20% of every year for the last 41 years stopping it. It's that simple.
Well, I mean, there's so many forgeries,
It's horrible.
classic painters, right? Vermeer, that great story in the past from the Vermeer forger and everything. It's like crazy, the history of it. I don't know. What gets me about these guys is that when you look at a lot of forgery, so-called forged art, or I guess real forged art, they can damn well paint. How come they don't paint their own thing?
Paint your own shit.
It's like, it blows my mind. Why would you go through all this effort to copy somebody else when you obviously have the ability to draw and paint? Don't draw and paint your own thing, for Christ's sake. Why? It's like, where is that space in their heads that allows them to do that? I don't get it. I really don't get it. It's really weird. It's just a kind of a very strange conversation.
So
Anyway.
That's where we are.
So
can't hear you. Oh, you muted. You muted the transmission, it says. You muted yourself. It says guest has muted.
can you hear us?
That means. Can you hear us?
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you. There's a little thing that says guest has muted transmission themselves.
Who's the guest? Is that us?
All right, wait a minute. Can't get you. Oh, well. So, Keith, since they can't hear you because I can't hear you, I'm going to say goodnight for everybody here. I don't know, Alexandra? Let's see. Oh, God. I can't even read these. They're like tall and skinny, these questions. So I'm sorry, people. I can't read your questions. It was a joy to be here tonight, really. What? I don't know, Keith. I don't know what you want to say. So anyhow, I'm going to sign off. We're going to say goodbye. I will be back again someday, I'm sure. And
2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. Is there anybody there? Is there anybody there?
Okay, stop. And as I believe Keith ends these, usually if you are enjoying these Thursday afternoon jaunts through our life, please like us or join us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and wherever. We have 7 Facebook pages, so you're going to find us somewhere, I'm sure. And YouTube, tell your friends. Watch all our other videos. We have lots of those that you can see. You can watch him paint, which he will be doing on Thursday nights very soon in the future. He will be painting and sketching and doing blackboards, and as we kind of navigate our way through how much equipment we need to show you as much as we would like to show you. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank everybody out there.
Bye, everyone.
Good night and good luck.
And good luck, right. Okay.